let it slide. Nah, I done did a lot just to get by, so I can't let it slide. I escaped the mental shackles, I ain't got patience for these bastards.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is MagMongoSlade. So we're going to talk about WWE Biography, The Ultimate Warrior. So this one needs to be taken a little bit at a time. They went over the entire breadth of Warrior's career. They ignored his WCW stuff because it really is nothing to talk about there. But they spent a lot of time on his childhood. They spent a lot of time on his career. Well, up until he won the title and he lost it. They didn't talk about anything after that. And they kind of moved it back into his personal life after he lost the title. And there's a lot to talk about. Man, I'm pretty sure I have a time limit. So there's going to be some things I got to leave out. I might have to do a part 2. But let's get into the spicy Warrior takes. Let's get into that. Some of the stuff about him being a homophobe and a racist or whatever. So let's talk about this. The one thing I did not like that Dana Warrior basically was like, oh, he listened to talk radio a lot. You know, he found kinship in like Rush Limbaugh. It's like, no, don't blame Rush Limbaugh for anything that Ultimate Warrior said. No, he might have. Look, we all get that, you know, sometimes these people, you know, they listen to things and then they just regurgitate them. That's entirely possible. But Warrior was a smart guy. I listened to a few of his speeches. He had a mind of his own, right? He had a mind of his own. Put it into perfect context what he said about gays. When he said that queering doesn't make the world go round. That's what he said in his speech. But what he was talking about was vices and virtues. That society has become obsessed with vices at the expense of virtues. And then he was talking about things that the liberal agenda, which is the real problem here. They don't care about blacks or gays or any of that stuff. They care that he was attacking the liberal agenda. That the utopian concept of everything is equal, everybody's equal, everything is the same. And this is where he started comparing things. He starts comparing Kwanzaa to Christmas, a terrorist to an American founding father, gays to straight people, that kind of thing, right? So he's saying that one is valid, the other isn't. A terrorist is not as valid as an American founding father, even though that's a matter of opinion. Okay, one person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist. That Kwanzaa isn't as valid as Christmas. Well, both are cultural holidays. Christianity kind of put some steam behind Christmas. Kwanzaa was just literally made up. It has no cultural roots outside of the United States. But, you know, Christmas at one point wasn't really about Jesus. It was Saturnalia, if I remember correctly. It was just kind of like a big harvest that the Romans used to have. So, you know, that's one thing. Now, he's talking about gays and straights. He's talking about it not being as valid. He was talking in terms of nature. You know, when he says queering doesn't make the world go round, or queering doesn't make the world go forward, or whatever the case may be, he's talking about humans' reproduction and stuff like that. Now, these people seem to think that his 54 years of life is about them because they're narcissists. So that means we're supposed to spend, an hour talking about something that, you know, that he dedicated 6 seconds to? No, nobody cares, man. Look, he said some naughty words. He had some spicy takes. It has nothing to do with Rush Limbaugh. It got nothing to do with, you know, him being an insecure small town boy. It's got nothing to do with any of that stuff. He was a man who had his own thought processes. His motivational videos were actually pretty good. You know, they was like, oh, he's talking to himself. It's like, yeah, when you're doing motivational speeches, you are initially talking to yourself as well. You know, but it seemed to me that, you know, he became a conservative blogger and he was basically repeating things that he heard on talk radio. And I was just thinking to myself, like, nah, man, come on. I'm not going to buy that one. There's a lot of shit being shoveled in the world. I'm not going to buy that one. Hellwig or the Warrior or whatever, he was very smart. And he was very well read. And if you actually listen to his whole speeches and not just get offended, and especially if you're, somebody who agrees with a lot of his political positions, you won't see a lot of the stuff that he's talking about. They actually put on the screen some of the things that he some of the blogs that he wrote. I didn't bother to read that shit. It was going too fast. But it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is the man lived for 54 years. We're not going to distill his life to these weird moments where he said mean things or people are offended by the things that he said. I'm just not going to do it. I don't want my life belittled like that. I'm not going to do that shit to nobody else. He's not Hitler, right? He didn't commit any genocides. He didn't rape anybody. He didn't molest a child. He didn't murder anybody. At most, he was mean to people. Oh, he was mean to his coworkers. They're grown men. So what? He was mean to a kid. We're going to talk about that kid thing because I did take that kind of personally. Only because it's a kid. And, I don't care about him offending grown folks. Who fuck cares? Now, Ron Funches was in it and Sam Roberts. And they was talking about how he was doing damage to the brand, essentially. And you're making me believe that the Ultimate Warrior stands for things that I don't stand for, which I think is a legitimate position. I think it is a legitimate position for you to say, this character, I'm not sure that this character, and he named himself after the character, so they have a right to say, well, look, the character is, you can't separate it, because Warrior wasn't trying to separate it. He named himself Warrior, so he's taken that on and taken it into himself, and to him, that's who he was. And he's, but when you think about what he's saying, a lot of what he's saying is, to an extent, objectivism, right? He's talking about objective virtues versus objective vices, things that tear you down versus things that build you up, or things that build up to society. Of course, he doesn't believe in the liberal utopia. Nobody should. Nobody who's rational would believe that crap. I mean, it's disproven at every level. I don't want to have to go into this, but if you have a regular household, mom, dad, 3 kids, all 3 of those kids start at the same place. They're going to be the same race, same economic factors. You're going to still get different outcomes. So, one may become a fucking genius, the other one could become a fucking bum, and another one's pretty normal. It's all based on choices and decisions. This thing is not the way that people think it is. But let's move on to another subject. Vince McMahon. So Vince McMahon, I don't think he recognizes, as a matter of fact, he probably does, how much weight his face and voice brings to subjects. Vince McMahon brought such a mob boss mentality to this situation. And I quote, almost died laughing when he said, again, I couldn't wait to fire him. He said it on the, I think it's the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD. He said it. And that's the one of the most hilarious things about that DVD. And he said it again, like he just couldn't wait to fire him. But their relationship was the one thing that I think is very important. Because you got Jim Hellwig, who was made fun of for being poor. He didn't have much of anything. His dad had run out on him. He doesn't really trust anybody. He had quit the Blade Runners because he thought Sting was betraying him by continuing to work even out after he was leaving. And so he goes to the WWF and he builds this bond with Vince. And he begins to think that him and Vince are, maybe a different kind of relationship. Vince sees it as a business relationship. Warrior is seeing the personal behind it. Because in all of these clips, and they're showing these beautiful clips of Vince right there with Warrior, coaching him through promos, coaching him through stuff. Like, come on, Jim, you can do it. And Jim's like, yeah, okay, I got it. You know, and you can see, like Warrior said, he was 30 when he won the title, I believe. So that means before then he was in his 20s. So you're talking about this young guy who, you know, had just been thrust into a high pressure position. He's, you know, a top babyface in the biggest wrestling promotion in the world. You know, the biggest wrestling promotion to ever exist. And he's not entirely sure he knows what he's doing. People are complaining about him, his peers, not just because they're jealous, some of them are, but because he is not properly, not well trained, because his performances are not good. So he's, you know, you got to take into account he's listening to all these whispers. The only person who believes in him is Vince McMahon. He's the only person who's got his back. Because despite the fact you got all these people telling him he can't work. Vince, he's running to the ring, he's getting blown up. Vince, he's hitting too hard. Vince, he's not doing it, he's doing this, he's doing that. All these old timers are tearing him down. And Vince is like, I don't want to hear it. Jim is my guy. You know? And it wasn't until Jim started fucking with business that Vince flipped on him. That's fucked up. You know? That's legitimately fucked up. But what else can you do? Now, WWE has changed their, you know, after getting exposed by the Warriors' letters, they kind of had to change their whole idea when it came to the infamous stick up for SummerSlam. What was that, 1991? You know, the old story is that, you know, Warrior demanded that Vince gives him $500,000 or he wasn't going to perform at SummerSlam. The story is told as if it took place backstage, right before the show started or something like that. In actuality, Warrior dated a letter 6 weeks before SummerSlam and sent it to Vince, where he is making demands that he wants to be paid $550,000, which he feels is the appropriate payoff for his WrestleMania match with Randy Savage. And he wants equal merchandise and everything with Hogan. So whatever cut Hogan gets, that's what he wants. And Vince has 6 weeks to come up with these demands, or Warrior is not going to show at SummerSlam. But he's saying that he's going to stay home with someone who cares something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. And while it is not the stick up that we were told it was, it ain't much better, if you're being honest. You're talking about 1991. They've put all of this effort into Hogan and Warrior as a team. And now you've got 6 weeks to change the entire storyline that you've already been promoting. This ain't, you know, like today. Today you can change the shit on Raw. You know, he's the guy right now, you know, beat him on SmackDown or something like that, you know, something, and we get out of the way. No. If the guy's healthy and this is a big money match that Vince is trying to put some, you know, trying to make some cash off of, he got to get the match in the ring. So he took the lump, you know, paid some of it out, agreed tentatively to the idea, and then sent this spicy ass letter back to Warrior, in which basically he told Warrior, you know, you're a legend in your own mind. Hogan is a legend. He's a bigger draw than you. He's more important than you, which is mean-spirited as fuck. Like, that is psychologically damaging. It is kind of traumatic because you out there busting your ass, taking all of these, you know, like taking all these bumps on the road, killing yourself, and this guy's like, you know, cool. You know, you're trying hard, but Hogan's a bigger star than you are. He makes more money than you. You know, he's a bigger star than you'll ever be. He is a legend. You're just a legend in your own mind. That's fucked up. And I get why Vince did it, you know, because he was offended that Warrior came at him with that bullshit. You know? But it was strictly, from the Warriors' perspective, it was business. From Vince's perspective, it was personal. And that's the problem. You know? And Warrior was mad And this is this is kind of why I say Warrior's not the babyface, because he was mad that Vince made him apologize via video to a fan that Warrior had pretty much said some naughty things to, right? So apparently the story goes that Warrior ran into a kid in the airport. The kid say, "Oh, you the Ultimate Warrior?" And Warrior just kind of said some really bad stuff to the kid. Vince finds out about it and makes Warrior do this video apology. And the video apology is the most sad shit probably in the documentary. It legit hurt my feelings. It hurt my feelings from two different perspectives. One, because the Warrior didn't want to do it. Two, because Vince was telling him, like, Jim, it's a work. Just spit the fucking words out so we can go do what we got to do. Like, Vince is not taking this personally. He's like, okay, well, the kid wants an apology. Just apologize to the fucking kid. And Warrior's like, yeah. I mean, I know. I wish I had said what I said. I didn't really say it, but I wish I had said it. And he keeps trying to gets back in character. And then he's just like, fuck. You know, he just doesn't have the motivation to apologize for offending a kid. And Vince is just like, motherfucker, will you please just do this? Jim, it's a work. Just do it. And it's like, that didn't sit well with me. Because it's a kid. You know, like, this kid, you know, could have been any kid. And he's looking up to the Ultimate Warrior, who is larger than life. He is a big star. Or even if he wasn't a gigantic Hulk Hogan level draw, he was a big star to some people. And for that kid, and then for that story to spread around to other people, you had to know that it affected his ability, it affected his star power. You know? Because, you know, people weren't going to let that shit slide. I started hearing the Warrior stories in 97, and I wasn't even, like, quote unquote smart. You know, I used to hear stories about the Warrior being an asshole. You know? So I know 97, I was 13. So yeah, I wasn't even smart to the business and I knew Warrior was a dick. That kind of stuff really bothered me. Like the whole, like him offending college students, I don't care. They're adults. Who cares? They can stand there and cry. They can tweet and Facebook or whatever. Who cares? But when you're talking about a small kid who is running into one of his heroes in the airport that he was not completely not expecting, wasn't like today. Like today, like a couple years ago, wasn't it? Like maybe even 2 years ago, Randy Orton ran into a guy in the airport, or in the bathroom or something, ran up, or it was in the gym, wasn't it? Ran up on Randy Orton, grown ass man. And Randy Orton was like, get the, fucked off, completely different. That's a grown ass man. We talking about a little kid, and then he's not even in the apology, not even saying what he's apologizing for. He's basically saying like the Ultimate Warrior will not allow anybody to harm you, to offend you, to upset you. And I'm just like, nah, I'm not going to buy that one. Out of all the shit people saying about them, that bothered me. Because I can imagine being that kid. I can imagine being that kid and running to one of your heroes like, oh my God. And basically getting blown off, being told to fuck off. Like that would run you from the business. You wouldn't want to be a wrestling fan anymore after that. So, no, I'm not buying that one. But the relationship between Vince and Warrior is crazy. And when they started saying like, hey, maybe he saw you as a father figure, and Vince was just kind of like, And he was like, I understand that some of our performers see it that way, but I only have one son. I have the one son. And of course, everybody, obviously it's Triple H. We get it, because it's still today a thing for the performers to want Vince's approval. And they put the Miz in there to kind of be like, yeah, that's the best thing. And you see in the WWE produced documentaries when they do the big hug, guys come back, they go straight to Gorilla. How was my match? Get the big thumbs up, the big hug or whatever. And it basically just makes guys beam. Girls too, makes everybody super happy around there. And you're looking at, that's the guy that shit on Ultimate Warrior. You know, that's why I thought it was hilarious when he shit on Kevin Owens, when he asked Kevin Owens, like, my match good? And he was like, no. I thought it was hilarious. But I couldn't imagine being Ultimate Warrior, you out there busting your ass or whatever, and then you get told, like, yeah, you're too big for your britches. And that's pretty much what Vince said, is like, some of our performers, they get a little ahead of themselves, and he says it happens a lot. And I was like, I bet it does. But it came across like he was putting Warrior in his place, and I don't like that kind of stuff. That's where you get the, all the people who are like, the power dynamics of the wrestling business, and they should have a union and all that shit. That throws logs on that fire. When you got Vince telling people like he needs to stay in his place, it's like that doesn't sound like a business relationship to me, right? You want to keep it business. You could have just said, look, what he wanted was completely, it just wasn't going to work because he wasn't that level of a draw. He wasn't that level of success. Then I would have been like, okay, that makes sense. But when you basically like, well, I just want to put him in his place, I'm just like, Vince, come on. Come on. We know that's what it is, but you ain't got to put it in those terms, like sweeten it somehow. Vince turned him, well, he's already a heel. He basically turned himself heel in this documentary. But I do appreciate that, him saying that he did have a very special relationship with Warrior, and that Warrior got to eat at the house. Him and Shane was talking about that. There were some very few stories of guys eating at the house, coming over. And I've heard those stories before about Warrior having a very close relationship with Vince and Linda, and he was one of their guys. And I think at the time he was the youngest guy, one of the younger guys on the roster. Cause I know like Owen Hart was on the roster and stuff like that. So there were guys on the roster younger than him. But I'm talking about like in that main event scene. There were guys younger than him. But to me, I was just kind of like, man, I didn't like Vince or Warrior in the whole Vince Warrior thing. I didn't like Warrior because he was a dick. He didn't even want to apologize to the kid. Even if it was, it's a perceived thing. Like when you offend somebody, it's their perception, right? When it's a kid, you can be like, all right, kids take things the wrong way. I was in a bad mood. I'm sorry. From a Vince perspective, he just comes across like an empty businessman, like a cold-hearted suit. And like, that's kind of what Vince is. And that's kind of what makes him funny as hell to me. Because he's like, he is a real life Michael Corleone / Gordon Gekko. Like it's fucking great. But then you see the dark side of that, which is, him basically being like, fuck Warrior. Like Warrior's an asshole. He didn't want to show up. Fuck him. And then you kind of like, ugh. But in order to get, out of these guys, what he's trying to get out of them, he's got to be both of those things. He's got to be the stern disciplinarian, but he's also got to be a great coach. And he's got to be there in their ear, giving them directions and bringing out the best that he can bring out of these guys. But he's also got to be there to cut them down. And it reminds me a lot of another guy I'm sure Vince was trying to put in his place, Brock Lesnar. Brock was writing in his book that, before he went to New Japan, he was talking about going back to WWE. He had talked to Vince first. He went to go talk to Vince. And he had already gotten this tattoo on his chest. And Brock was talking about the tattoo meant that he felt like there was always a sword at his neck. And, Vince said, told him that it was just going to be him and Vince. And then he shows up and then John Laurinaitis is there. And he's like, okay, that was strike one. And then Vince hears about the sword. And then they demanded that he take his shirt off to show them the sword because they had never seen it. And then that was like strike two. And then, Vince, he said, I felt like they were trying to bully me. And I was like, I bully Brock? But at the same time, I was like, this is not UFC champion Brock, $4 million a fight Brock. This is, Brock when he's, on pills and painkillers, barely making it. And I can see Vince trying to pull some bullshit on him, you know? So I don't always deny those stories. Like there are certain things about him I don't buy, but I can see Vince as being a lizard-like businessman, you know? And he would not be successful if he wasn't. And that's the sad part. But this documentary, I was like, whew, Vince, will you please pull a punch? But I did enjoy him and Shane and Paul Heyman and stuff like that. To that point, they also talked about the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD. And I want to talk about that too, because for me, I remember when the DVD was released. I was just really getting back into wrestling. And I remember everybody being so angry that DVD had been released. Oh, the WWE is horrible. How can they do this to the Ultimate Warrior? Why would they do this? It was a hit piece. It was a hit job. Worst documentary in history. And now these same people, so many of them are salivating over, well, they're going to rip them apart on Dark Side of the Ring. Like, it's like, oh, okay. So it wasn't cool when they did it, but it's cool when Vice does it. And they did mock him very heavily in that joint. They mocked his promos, and basically said that he was nothing and downplaying him, and then he was a flash in the pan and a lot of other stuff. There was some horrible stuff said about Warrior in that documentary. And yeah, I'm pretty sure it was hurtful. But here's the thing, dog. There have been people who have said horrible shit about Warrior since that documentary has come out. And just because they didn't have WWE logos on their shirts, for instance, whenever his name comes up, Jim Ross pretty much rips him. We already know Jim Cornette rips him all the time. But Jim Ross tears Warrior apart. Bruce Pritchard tears Warrior apart every time. There is so much negativity around Warrior that the fans are negative for all of the conservative politics stuff. Then you got all of the a lot of his peers in the business don't like him. And it is, because of his attitude and his approach to doing business and his approach to the business and his approach to other people, him not being a people person. And it sucks, but that was a flat out, punch in the jaw. But that DVD came out around the same time people started saying he was a racist and everything. So they were correct in saying that, oh yeah, they was basically trying to separate themselves from Warrior. So they put out this DVD to, he was supposed to be involved with it, if I remember correctly. But he backed out at the last minute, and they were going to do they were going to do it with him or without him. And since they did it without him, he didn't get to speak for himself. And that's one way of looking at things. So considering we're in the age of everybody doing shooter interviews, and Warrior's been dead for 7 years, and now people are going to talk about all of the things that he supposedly said and supposedly done, and they're calling him names, and he's not going to get to defend himself. He actually did get to defend himself from the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD. He got to go out and talk about that. He got to write letters to wrestling websites and stuff like that talking about it. Now, I would go into, reading some of that stuff, but maybe I'll do it some other time. But he got to respond to the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD. Is he going to get to respond to any of this crap that people are talking about him now? No, because he's been dead. He's dead. Whatever Vince had to say about Warrior, he said it in that DVD. And Warrior still lived another 9 years. Whatever you say about him now, you're saying about him behind his back. He can't respond. And, double back to what I said earlier. His life ain't about you. It's it is what it is at that point. I just wanted to make sure that everybody recognizes that, you know, how hypocritical is it that when WWE did a DVD mocking him, which in which the stories might be real or not. I heard that Jericho said that, you know, he was told to rip Warrior on the DVD. Other people were basically like, oh, we want to tell the truth. So that kind of means that when they do these documentaries, they're not always telling the truth, which of course they're not. You're not always a big fan of a guy all the time. Sometimes you don't like the guy, you know. But at the same time, man, we're in a crazy situation where, you know, people are kind of saying like, oh, well, they made all that stuff up. I don't know how much of that stuff was made up. They basically made fun of his promos a lot and his lack of wrestling ability, which they have video evidence for, of him dropping like Bobby Heenan on his face and, you know, stuff like that. But I don't see how WWE were the bad guys for putting out that DVD. And then we're all supposed to sit around and be super happy that Vice is going to call him a racist and all that shit. I just don't see how we're supposed to do that. You know, it doesn't make any sense to me. All of the backstage stuff that we saw, I was glad to see his mom, his football coach, you know, all of the people from Indiana that, you know, because I didn't even know that the Warrior was from Indiana, if we're being honest. I like the idea of the Warrior being this mystical creature that comes from parts unknown, running full speed at anything that he's going to take on and slaying it. You know, the Warrior was a dragon slayer, man. You know, part of the reason why he didn't really draw as the champion, and they talked about it, is that they didn't give him any dragons to slay. You know, he had slayed the mightiest of the dragons with being Hulk Hogan. You know, that's a happily ever after. You know, you have to, at some point you have to figure out what to do afterwards. And then maybe you should have, you know, there's some things that I'm sure that if I were booking it, I probably would have done differently. But that's something to think about, you know, when you're booking somebody as strong as Ultimate Warrior, because they did the same thing to Goldberg, right? Goldberg had his happily ever after he slayed Hogan. He slayed the mightiest giant. He slayed the mightiest dragon. What more is there to do? Now you have to try to get Kurt Hennig to be a good competitor, and you know how much I love Mr. Perfect on this channel. Same thing with Rick Rude. I love Rick Rude. But for fuck's sake, this guy just beat Hulk Hogan. Well, we have to find another dragon for him to slay. And Rick Rude is not that guy. And even if you want to say, well, he's the only guy to pin the Ultimate Warrior, which is what they tried to do, of course. It's not enough. You know, this guy body slammed Andre the Giant. He beat Hulk Hogan. We need a new dragon for him to slay. You know, and we didn't get that. You know, and I've seen some people say, well, Warrior should have been wrestling Earthquake, and he should have. And they should have put more effort into the Warrior-Undertaker feud and built that up and did that more. You know, there was a lot of things that they should have done. But that's the number one problem. You know, what was wrong with the Warriors booking? Same thing that was the problem with Goldberg's booking. Once you're the Warrior and you slay the dragon, you win the war. Now what? There's no one else to fight. So, you know, of course his career petered out after that. There was literally nothing else for him to do. You had to bring in somebody else. Now, just imagine what they could have done if they did Warrior versus Sid Vicious. Instead of bringing Sid in to replace the Warrior. If they'd have brought Sid in as an opponent for Warrior. Oh, that would have been awesome. It would have been awesome. They would have had to do some work to get Sid over, but that would have been awesome. But I'm off into fantasy booking now. All right, I love this documentary. I think it was the best one yet. The Roddy Piper one was pretty good. Stone Cold Steve Austin was pretty good. It was kind of bland. Shawn was pretty good, but the Warriors was the best because they touched on a little bit of everything and they skipped over things that, you know, didn't matter. You know, they skipped over the WCW stuff. It didn't matter. The latter part of his career, you know, when he was going through things, wearing hats and stuff, didn't matter. So we got what we wanted. You know, they addressed some of the things that were said about him. They didn't spend a lot of time on it. They spent about 30 minutes on the entire gamut of his quote-unquote conservative ideology that led him to saying things that he shouldn't have said. But I did love his relationship with his daughters and how his daughters talked about him, and how he said that they said he had a list of things that they had to work on throughout the year before they get Christmas presents. So he would give them lists of things to improve upon. And that sounds like such an Ultimate Warrior thing if you sit down and watch like his motivational videos. And his motivational videos are fucking fantastic. I saw one earlier where he talked about, you know, and I'm gonna close with this, where Warrior was talking about whatever things that, you know, when people say that something is say there's virtue, integrity, honor, loyalty, all these types of things, they'll say that this is the first foundational virtue that you have to have in order to be a success. And he was like, no, the first thing you need to do is to always believe in yourself. If you believe in yourself, you can do anything. The rest of that shit will fall in place. And I wish I could play it, you know, because it's pure genius. It's absolutely dope shit. And he's just yelling at you through the camera, and you feel his intensity because that's who he was. He was high stress all the time, you know, high energy all the time. But that's what I'm going to remember. I'm going to remember the guy blasting through the curtains, running down to the ring. I'm not going to be concerned about his conservative ideology. He can't hurt you. He's dead. Okay. Oh, I want to talk about this too, because I saw this and I was going to make a separate video about it, but I'm going to do it here. Rob Schamberger, the WWE artist. So he posted some pictures of portraits that he had drawn of the Ultimate Warrior. And he talked about how Ultimate Warrior was, you know, these portraits of Warrior are the reason why he's in the position that he's in today, and he can take care of himself. And, you know, it really took his career on the upswing. But he's never going to be, he can't draw Warrior anymore, knowing that his art is going to cause pain to others. That's not why I do this. He's apologizing for drawing pictures of a guy who said naughty things. Are you fucking serious? That's why people say naughty things about you weirdos. You're a fucking weirdo. Who the fuck cares? Nobody cares. Okay? This guy, all on his own, goes on the internet and starts fucking apologizing for drawing pictures of the Ultimate Warrior and basically saying, I'll never do it again. I'll do better. It's like, what the fuck is your problem? You're an artist. You draw wrestlers. You have no control over what the wrestler does or what the wrestler says. Matter of fact, take it to the next level, asshole. Stop taking money from it. See, that's the thing. That's what pisses me off about a lot of these people. You know, it's like it's not enough to that, you know, you got WWE apologizing and trying to make excuses. You got his wife apologizing, trying to make excuses. Not a guy who just fucking draws pictures is online talking about, oh, well, I don't want to upset anyone by drawing pictures of the Ultimate Warrior. Motherfucker, fuck out of here. You're weak. Weak. Why would anybody want to fellowship with these people? Like, these people want to believe in togetherness and all this kind of stuff. And it doesn't matter what horrible things you do, as long as you vote a certain way, it's okay. But if you vote a way that they don't want, all of a sudden we can't even draw pictures? We can't draw pictures? What the fuck out of here, man. All right. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel. Thank you guys for your time. Taking a lot of time. And I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.
Old non-aggression. Once that lesson sets in, you'll see a session where you got an affection for no progression, regret.